Hello and welcome to this session at the Designers Fiesta. This time what we're going to look at is making better graphics for TV using Photoshop. Now, if any of you have ever tried making graphics before for TV, you may well have found yourself disappointed with the quality of how the image looked once it hit the TV screen compared to how it looked on your computer when you designed it. And there are a number of reasons for this. And what we'll do is we'll take each reason step by step and we'll look at how we can avoid that happening and make sure that your graphics look a lot better on the TV screen, even though they might look worse on your computer. So I'm going to start off in Photoshop. And the first issue that we're going to come across is making sure that you know what it is that you're making a graphic for. Just stop this annoying thing from flicking about, otherwise it'll distract me. So yeah, just finding out what you're actually making your graphic for, and by that what I mean is what kind of video codec is or final edit is the graphic actually going to go into, because without that information you really don't know where to start. Now, if we start off by looking at how to make a new Photoshop document, which I'm sure you know, but do you know how to make one for a TV picture? So go up to File and New, and in there it comes up with the usual, what do you want to do? What kind of document do you want? And usually you're maybe going to make a default Photoshop size or maybe something for the web. But what we're going to do is we're going to make something for film and video. We're going to choose that as a preset. Now, once you get into the preset for film and video, there's a whole list of things that you could then set up. And this is where it's really important that you know what kind of video you're going to be making the graphic for. And if you look at this drop-down list here where it talks about size, there's a list of different TV standards in here. And for this particular exercise, I'm going to work with this DVC Pro HD. The DVC Pro is a Panasonic high-definition codec, and I'm going to use the 1080p. To be honest, the P and the 29.97 are not really that important. The important part is the 1080, so it's 1080. That's how many lines the TV screen will contain, how many lines of information. But we can think of that as pixels. That's how many pixels high our picture that we're making is going to be. So I'm going to choose that. And it does a whole load of things. It sets a width, and it sets a height, and it sets a resolution of 72 dots per inch, which is the resolution of a TV screen. They're not going to go any higher than that, so there's no use making a document that is any higher than that. Color mode goes to RGB. That's absolutely fine. That's what we need. And that's it set to go. Now, apart from one small area, which is down here in this section that says Advanced, because it talks about color profile, and the default for any of the film and video presets in Photoshop is to not color manage this document, when really you do need to be color managing. And there's two options that you should really stick to. If I open this up, see that there's all the different color management options, big huge list. And you've got ones that talk about SDTV and NTSC and PAL and CCAM, and these all look like the ones that would be the kind of thing you'd want to use for TV. But in actual fact, what we want to use for that particular codec, in fact for any particular high definition codec, is this one, HTTV Rec 709. Or we can look at the 16 to 235, that's a nice shortcut, but I'm going to go with this one because I'm going to show you how you can set this up yourself. It's quite important that you understand what that means. So we'll do that the longhand way. So we'll choose this, HDTV Rec 709. If you're working with any of the presets that are set for standard definition, then don't use HDTV Rec 709. Instead, use this one here, which is called it's SMPTE, or sometimes referred to as SMPTE, SMPTEC. But, see, I've got too big a finger on this mouse, that one. So for this we use HDTV Rec 709. Click OK, and it pops open this screen. Now the first thing to notice on the screen is, well, it's elongated, it's rectangular, it's 16 by 9 in size. It's exactly the same proportions as a TV screen, and it has these little blue guides that have automatically appeared for us to use. Now the outside guide that you can see, the one that runs around the outside, forget about where they overlap, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just this outside guide here that runs around. That takes up about, or reveals rather, about 80% of the overall screen size, and this is known as the action safe. And the idea is, if you're doing any video editing, that anything that's really important to the movement or the overall scene should be sitting inside that frame there, because there's a possibility with the different scan sizes of TV screens at home that some people might miss some of the areas around here. They might just get cropped off by the TV itself. So it's a nice little safe zone. It's a bit like if you're printing, you could almost think of it like a bleed area. There's always a chance that it might appear or it might not appear. And then the other line, the one that's inside there, sits at about 60% of the overall picture size. And this is known as your title safe. It's an extra safe area where if you're putting any important text or graphics that you want people to be able to read, put them inside that area and they'll be guaranteed that they can see it. Nothing worse than if you're working on a news program and you bring up a president's name or someone important's name and the first 4 or 5 letters are cropped off by people, for people with smaller TVs. So we'll just make sure that it sits inside that space. Now for us, that outside area isn't so important, but the inside area, that definitely is, because when we want to put text and things in there, we'll have to make sure they fit into that space. Now, I've got a background image that I'm going to use on here, and I actually have it open already. It's this one here. And it looks, at this stage, like that would fit quite happily onto the display I'm wanting to work with, and everything would be hunky-dory. There's a slight problem. If I go and have a look at the preferences or the settings for this, if I go up to the view settings and go down to where it says pixel aspect ratio, you'll see that it's set to square, which is exactly what would happen with all photographs and all images that you bring up in Photoshop. They're automatically set to square pixels. That's absolutely fine. Where it's not so fine is once that hits a TV screen, because once it hits a TV screen, it no longer will be displayed by square pixels. Instead, it'll be displayed by rectangular pixels. And this is where the first major problem comes along. It's fine on the computer. It'll look fine when it's in the edit suite, in the edit software. It would look fine if you were making a video for Flash, let's say. But once it hits a TV screen, it won't look so fine anymore. And instead, it will look all stretched, and it'll look a little bit distorted. So we really want to try and avoid that from happening. Now, if I look at the TV screen, this is the preset I made for my TV, and I go up to View, and I look in the pixel aspect ratio, you'll see that this is displaying with a pixel aspect ratio for DVC Pro HD 1080. And it has a ratio of 1.5, which means it's about each pixel is half as times wide as it is high. So 1.5 times wider than it is high, giving it that rectangular shape. And Photoshop, certainly CS5, earlier versions like CS3, they don't have this. So it becomes a little bit more problematic. Has an option where it has this pixel aspect ratio correction. Now what this means is that whilst what you're doing in Photoshop, the display in front of you because you're on your computer, will still use rectangular pixels, it will artificially compensate for that and make it look the way it's going to look once it hits TV. And you'll see later on when I switch that off just how dramatic the difference can be. Now, let's just separate these two images out. This image here, this rugby stadium, is the one that I want to have as my backdrop. I'm going to build graphics up on top of this. But it's on the wrong pixel aspect ratio. But watch what happens if I pick it up and just going to drag it over and drop it onto this image. And I'll just place it and resize it so it fits in. Let's just tidy that up. So I'll just stretch it down, keeping the pixel aspect ratio the same so it fits in. Okay, now remember that was a square pixeled image. I've now put it into this rectangular pixeled image, and that should in theory have caused a problem. But Photoshop, being clever, has managed to work that out for itself and knows what to do and has helped me along the way, and has in fact converted this into a rectangular pixeled image from that square pixeled image because I added it to my TV image. And that's really important. If I just started to go to work on the square pixeled image, which is probably the way that you've done it in the past, there would have been all sorts of problems later on. But because I'm set up an image specifically for TV and now adding things to it, Photoshop takes care of it for me. In fact, if I go up to View and Pixel Aspect Ratio, I'm still looking at it as a rectangular image, or a rectangular pixeled image. And in fact, if I switch off the Pixel Aspect Ratio conversion or correction, you can see what happens. That is what Photoshop is actually creating, with in mind to at some stage when it hits a TV screen, it will be stretched across with the rectangular pixels and will therefore look normal again. It won't look that elongated, kind of stretched way. Okay, so that is a major help. Now, I've got a couple other images that I'm going to add into here. I'll just open them up. In great Blue Peter style, they're all ones that I've made earlier. So I've got PSD with this rugby player selected. I'll bring that one in. And I've also got a PSD with another player selected. There we go. So these have both got selections round about them. I'll just load each selection up. There it is. I'll do the same on this one. There they are. And let's just put us into a nice 4-up view. In fact, I don't need this one anymore, so I'll get rid of that just in case I get confused. Easily done. Now, if I take this picture, there's the guy. I'm just going to bring that over. I'm not going to bother making a mask or anything. I'm just going to bring that selection over and place him on my image. And I'll do the same with this one. Bring him, drop him on. Yeah, I'm getting a warning. That's okay because we'll be messing around with the colours anyway. And there we have it. Now, if I get, let's just tidy things away. And there's my overall picture with my two players in position. Now they're not scaled, they're not the right size or anything else. Otherwise, it's a bit unfair, one being that much bigger than the other. So we're still to resize them and everything else. But again, these pictures, these two photographs, have come from square pixel images and have gone onto this rectangular pixeled image, and Photoshop has worked out what it needs to do to prevent any distortion, and they're both fitting in there absolutely fine. Incidentally, an important element of working with graphics for TV is if you are going to resize, which I didn't do with the background, but I couldn't find a decent background image, so I just had to live with that one. If you're going to resize, it's better to work with larger images and take them down slightly. Mainly because if you're working, when it comes to this editing, and we'll have a look at it later, the larger the image is when you put it into the edit suite, the more flexibility you give an editor to perhaps maybe make players shrink, for example, on screen. So rather than just being static, you could put a little bit of movement. And there you'll really see that shrinking the picture down slightly was far more effective than making it grow because of that low resolution. So if we take Mr. Wilkinson here, and I'm just going to transform this image down, just bring his size down a little bit. So I can just do it here, because I can't see the edges. It's a bit better. and I'll put them in. Don't be too careful about placement. Just get it looking not too bad. Yeah, about there. So see him kicking the ball. I don't want to see the fact that his feet disappear a little bit. Yeah, I'll take that one. And if I take Mr. Parks, I'll do the same with him. We'll just reduce his size down as well until I'm happy with the overall image. There we go. It's kind of got a feel that they're both trying to kick the same ball. That'd be an interesting. I'm sure that's football, not rugby, but there we go. Okay, so they're in place. Great. That's my graphic started. And at least I know that the aspect ratio of the picture is correct. And when it goes onto a TV screen, it won't look odd. There's my Photoshop image. That's the actual real image I'm making. But this is what it will look like on a TV. Okay, now, first thing we need to tackle is the brightness, the overall brightness of the picture. Because whilst I'm looking at a screen here that can show me from a luminance range from 0 to 255, when I'm looking at it on a TV screen, that is somewhat restricted down to 16 and 235. So the maximum level of black, or perhaps I should say the minimum level of black, is not 0, but is 16. So it's really just grey. And the brightest you can push the white is not 255, but 235. So again, that's another reason why when you make a graphic in Photoshop, put it onto a TV screen, it just doesn't have the same vibrancy. So we can deal with that now. Now, the adjustment layer, I'm going to place above layers 1, 2, and 3 that contain all the contents here. So I'll just go up and get that. And the adjustment layer I'm going to put in is levels. Now, when I take the levels, to get the output level to 16, so that black appears at no darker than 16, I'm just going to go to the box here, which is output levels, and I'll type in 16. And instead of 255 for white, I have to go 235. So we'll just put that to 235 as well. And there you can probably see, just from your screens there, that looks a lot duller. And if you're in any doubt, just make sure that that is at the top, so it's affecting the 3 layers underneath. That's what it looks like without the adjustment layer. That's what it looks like with the adjustment layer. You can see there, quite a substantial difference in the overall vibrancy of the picture. But that will have made a major difference to how it's going to look on the TV. Okay, but it's not just the luminance that is restricted between 16 and 235. Colour is also affected by the same thing. Unlike RGB on a TV screen, on a computer screen, the luminance and colour on a TV are actually separated from one another. So by adjusting the luminance, that's not affecting the brightness of, or the saturation levels of the colour. So we really have to tackle colour on its own. And again, we can do something similar. We can use an adjustment layer to fix that. Now there is a filter that could help, which you could apply, and it's always worth trying. I always think if Photoshop makes your life easy, then let it. And if you have a look up in the filters panel on the menu and go down to the category called video, you'll see inside there that there is a filter called NTSC Colors. It's greyed out just now because in the layers panel I have a levels select. If I select one of the image layers and go back up there, filter, video, and I could choose NTSC color, and I could apply a filter which should keep, in this case it says NTSC colors. It doesn't matter whether you're using NTSC or PAL as a TV standard. In the UK it would be PAL. It'll still have the same effect of restricting the colors down. So you could apply that, although most good designers, let's call them that, that's probably an unfair description, would suggest that don't rely entirely on the filters because they're good but they're not always great. Instead, just do it yourself. And there's a really kind of belt and braces approach that we can take to this. If I bring up the info panel here, okay, which if you don't have, you go up to Window and Info and you'll find it. And that's that moving around the image, especially the brighter areas. Okay, you can start to see that maybe some of the more intensely coloured areas, you're looking for anywhere that might go above 235. And the way to tell is if you look here, you've got this RGB setting, and you can go in and have a look for areas that look particularly highly saturated and just see if any of them push past 235 in any of the colours. And they don't really here, but there's always a chance that there's one or two areas, especially if I come down to his boot where I've got the red of his boot. There's a chance that that might push past it, or the blue here, that might push past it. Now if there was anywhere glaring that jumped out and said, oh yeah, this is definitely up, this is too high, then what you need to apply is another adjustment layer, and that would take care of it for you. If I have a look in layers, this is the first adjustment layer I made. Go up to adjustments, and don't have a layer selected. Go up to adjustments, and the one I would usually recommend is hue and saturation, because it gives you a really nice level of control over the colours. So if I bring up a hue and saturation adjustment layer, the default setup is going to be the master, and I could go in and I could pull the saturation down a little bit if I felt it was a bit too high, if it was reading a bit too high with the info panel. And it then becomes a kind of combination of the info panel looking for troubled areas, and then the adjustment layer, and pulling them down a little bit just until you're happy. You could also use lightness, but I think you'll find that saturation works an awful lot better. Now reds and blues from a TV point of view are particularly troublesome, and in fact you might find, in order to get them to not look so bad on the screen, you might need to push the intense blues and intense reds in particular down as far as reading a maximum of 180. So in this case, you can see if we just focus on this boot here, you can see that there's quite an intense red at the back of the boot, and there's also a streak of quite a strong blue on the sides of the boot as well. There's not really anything on this side that would suggest that it was going to cause any kind of problem. This badge is already quite muted. So is the ball here. The blues and the reds are very quite mute already, so that should be fine. But this is a much more intense and vibrant image. So this red and blue here we're focused on. And again, if I take the info panel and I go over that red, you can see there that we're reading, in parts, we're reading well over the 180. Same for the blue. And some elements there. You can get it to go beyond the 180. So that adjustment layer that is controlling the hue and saturation, rather than it focus on the overall image, if I go to this little drop-down menu here, it says Master, and change it to, let's say, start off with the reds, I can apply a limiter, which allows me to just tweak the reds on its own. You can see you get this little section down here to show the reds are being affected only. And I could pull the saturation of the reds down further without desaturating the whole image. I could take it all the way down so that his boot becomes black. The only problem is that, there's a lot of red across the whole image. So the players go a bit peaky as well. I don't want to lose all of the red, but I do want to desaturate the red enough that it loses the intensity of red that I had earlier. And so I'll pull it down, and if I go back to the info panel and I can go over that red, and well, it's still a bit high in places, but like I say, only some of the time do you have to take it down to 180. You could go as far as that if necessary, but I'm not trying to advocate that you must take the red levels down to 180 and and no higher. Okay, that should make a difference. If necessary, I could pull it down further. Now, using the same adjustment layer, if I now change it to the blues rather than the reds, I could do the same with the blues, and see, I'll take the blues out a little bit more as well. Just desaturate them a little bit, just to soften the intensity or reduce the intensity of the blue on his boot there. Again, so when I go with the info panel, I can see what's going on. Look at the blue levels and see that they've done quite a lot as well. Now that of course makes the image look very flat and grey in comparison to how it should look in Photoshop. If I take both of these adjustment layers off, you can see that there is the difference. With them both off, with them both on. It's quite substantial, but you've got to consider the end medium, which is going to be your TV, and the fact that that will actually look better on a TV because your reds will not bleed across the screen. They will not look sort of fuzzy with a soft edge. You won't find that you've got parts where it's overexposed and becomes clipped and you lose some of the detail. And it will actually look much more rich and vibrant than it does here on the screen. So it's almost like the rule is that in Photoshop, to make something look better on TV, you must first of all make it look worse in Photoshop. And that seems like a strange thing to do, but as a rule of thumb, it's sensible. Okay, so I've got my background image set to go. The next job is to start thinking about adding text. Now text is also a tricky area when it comes to working with TV. In fact, any graphic elements are, not just text, but even just lines are. And this is because of the nature of how TVs project their image onto the screen. And they do so by scanning. So if you can imagine there's a line that will run horizontally across, and what it does is it continually rebuilds, almost like a loom going back and forwards, but it's going across, rebuilding the picture and scanning, rescanning twice every frame. Now the problem that can cause is that if you put any vertical graphics up and down, so something like let's see if we can get a straight line. I'm just take the brush tool. Anything that would run straight across helps if I actually choose a layer that contains something. Let's make a new layer. Pop it down here, and I'll take the brush tool. Not quite so big brush. Make it nice and small. What have we got there? White. Okay, let's swap it for a red colour so it stands out. So a straight line like that looks absolutely fine here on this. It doesn't because it looks a bad design, but it looks fine on the screen. But when that hits a TV screen, it can end up looking more like that, roughly, where you see steps. And like that. And like that. So it might step all the way across. Instead of being one nice solid straight line, it just breaks because of this horizontal line going across. So just remove all of them. So there's a few things that you can do to try and avoid that if you can. And one of these is if you are going to make anything that's got a straight line, make sure you don't make that straight line any narrower than 4 points across, which doesn't seem like a particularly thick line, but if you're making anything narrower than 4 points, you're definitely going to have an issue with those straight lines. If it's more than 4 points, you're reducing the potential issue, and the more you can add, the more width you can add, then the less likely you are to have a problem. Now working with text gives you similar problems, especially if you're using serif fonts. So if I go into the text here and I'll type, let's say I write, so I'll put the word England there, and let's just try a few different fonts on this. Let's see what we've got. Yeah, well, that's a good one. That's a good example, for example, a font like that, but let's see if we can find one a little bit more like the thing. Yeah, that would be a bad one. Perfect. What's that? Lucidia Calligraphy. A font like this. Now the problem with something like that as a font is that, fine, in some parts the lettering is nice and thick, but where it thins out, because it's a serif font, so all these little strokes and ticks and little embellishments running off the letters, they might cause the same kind of problem. You'll see that nasty stepping going across there, that sort of split you really want to try and avoid. So, simple rule when you're working with text is stick to a sans serif font. So if there, for example, is impact, I might even just go for capitals on that one instead. And if the option's available to you, use bold rather than normal. And try and avoid italic as well, because that can give you the same kind of issue. But bold text always reads better on a TV than it does on a computer, than say non-bold on a TV. And size becomes an issue as well. Now here I've got nice big text, it's 239 points, so that's not going to give me a problem. But if you are going to go with small text, don't go any smaller than 24 points. Now 24-point text on a TV screen is very, very small. There I've just made that 24-point text there. It's almost you're talking small print kind of level. And in most cases, you would not put text onto the screen at 24 point if you wanted people to actually be able to read it. Can you imagine something that small on your TV and you're sitting halfway across your sitting room trying to watch it? You wouldn't be able to read that, not without really, really good eyesight. So 24 points is actually a very reasonable size, but still one that's worth sticking to. No smaller than that. So there we go, we've got England. Let's just add a little bit more. In a new text layer. Let's put V, and I'll just bring the size down on that one. Make it a bit smaller and drop it maybe here somewhere. And then we'll put the inevitable. Put that in as well. Now, I didn't intend to make it quite that small. Let's just check what that is. It's 216, so we'll just add to 216 as well. There we go. And we'll just make sure that they fit in the space that we've assigned. The horizontal lines are absolutely fine. You can have them as thin as you like because the TV will scan horizontally and you won't see a problem. But anything that leaves a horizontal, that would. Oh, just noticed a slight problem. Look, I've put my D of the Scotland over the edge of that line. So again, you really want to try and avoid that. So what I'll do is I'll take the 3 layers and just move them all at the same time. It's a slightly easier place. Okay, so that text will fit in quite nicely on my screen as well. Now, what I'm going to do, just to add a little bit of punch to these, is I'm going to put a layer effect on each one. Well, incidentally, make sure when you apply your text layers that you put them underneath the same adjustment layers that are controlling the levels and the saturation as the photographs. Otherwise, if they end up on top, they won't be adjusted. And when you put them into your TV screen, they'll be clipped, they'll be too bright, all sorts of terrible things will happen. They'll just not look good at all. So make sure they stay there. So I'm going to go in and I'll add on the, well, we'll do it to the text layers as well, but I'll start off with the players. So I'm just going to have a wee go with a wee outer glow, just a subtle one. In fact, actually the default one would actually do, just to lift the players up a little bit and give them a little bit something. So there's an effect, an outer glow effect on that layer. I'll just copy that layer style and I'll take the other player and I'll paste that same layer style onto him, and I'll take the 3 text layers and I'll paste the same layer style onto them as well. There we go. That gives us a graphic that we could potentially work with. Now, next thing that we're going to have to think about is how we get this out of here to go into our edit suite. And it depends really on what your editor is working with and what they need. They might just say, look, give me it as a flattened JPEG, and that's absolutely fine. Or probably more likely to ask for something like a TIFF or a target if you're going to have an adjustment layer, not an adjustment layer, sorry, an alpha channel. If you've made a mask around anything and they want to keep that mask They might ask for it as a TIFF or a target. You just have to make sure that when you're exporting it, you include any transparencies. They won't ask for a PNG or a GIF because it just isn't quite the same definition. TIFF or target works a lot better. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to put it into Final Cut Pro 7. You can see it jumping away down here, waiting to be opened. Or the same could be true if we're putting it into Avid, or if they were going to be using Premiere Pro. Then we're going to take it out as a PSD file, so it remains in layers. Because all of these editing applications will recognize the layers and allow the editor to actually do stuff with them there. Like we could, for example, make the players move slightly, or make the text grow slightly, if we wanted to. Now the layers will go absolutely fine. So there'll be a layer for each player, there'll be a layer for the background, and there would be layers for the 3 bits of text. But what will not go across is the layer styles. The only place those layer styles would go across is in After Effects, and we're not using After Effects. So before we actually save this out as a PSD file and put it into Final Cut Pro to see what it looks like on the screen, we must first of all do something about the effects and actually apply them so that they become part of the layer rather than individual effects. And really the only way to do that is to start merging these layers down with other layers. So if I take this blue player, the Dan Park, this player here, and I'm going to add another layer, and I'll just drop it underneath. So there's my image with the glow, and there's a blank layer underneath. And if I select the two, and if I go to the little sub-menu here, for example, I can choose to merge the layers, or I can press Command or Control if you're using a PC, and just merge those two selected layers together. And then there's no longer an effect being applied, it's actually just part of the pixels of the layer. That will now go into the video editor without any fuss. I'll do the same for the others as well, just keep adding, wrong place, keep adding new layers, select the layer with the effect and this blank layer, and again this time I'll do Command E or Control E if you're using a PC, and that'll merge those together. Same again for the text. Now I could put the text all in the same layer and merge them all together, and that would be fine as well, but I would reduce the number of options the editor has in being able to create motion, to add motion parameters to the graphics. So the England v Scotland would have to move together, whereas with this I could always move one and then the other, which might work, that little bit better. So I'll just quickly basically rasterize all these effects as effectively is what I'm doing, really. There we go. So everything's now divvied up. The adjustment layers, they're fine. They can stay as they are just now. Okay, there you have it. So now if I save that, so let's go File, Save As, and I'll stick it on my desktop so I can find it later on, and I'll call it, let's call it Rugby Title. And click OK. Now when I go over to Final Cut Pro, here we go. I'm going to click over to Final Cut Pro. Here, for example, just as an idea of what we were doing earlier on, there's the JPEG of the square pixeled rugby ground that we were using before. So this is a square pixeled image. The sequence that I'm working on in Final Cut Pro, I should show you. If I go to my sequence settings. The sequence is DVC Pro HD 1080i. Okay. And the aspect ratio is 16:9 there, 1440 by 1080. If you remember the sizes when we started off in Photoshop, that's exactly the same size. So the presets on this are the same thing. And if I bring that rugby JPEG down and I'll put it on my sequence, over here, apart from the fact it's immediately overexposed, you can see that these green lines and this warning triangles tell me that it's too bright in some areas. And the red areas, if you can make it out on your screen, but there's some red lines showing the bits that are really too hot, and the green are the bits that are just getting close to being too hot, too bright for a TV screen. It fits. So you think, well, what's he talking about with this rectangular pixel? But what you have to remember is that I'm using a computer. You're looking at a computer screen that uses square pixels. So what's gone in there is a square pixel version of what I would see on a TV. Unfortunately, I can't show you what it looks like on a TV with a screen recording, but had it been put up onto a TV, the rectangular pixels of the TV would make that look slightly more stretched than it actually is. And that's where the problem lies. That's why things look okay on the computer, but they don't look okay once you put them out onto a TV. We'll just get rid of that. And let's bring in the graphic that we just made. There it is. Notice how squished it looks here because we're getting a 4:3 preview, but I'll just bring it in. Now, rather than bring it in as a clip like this one, you can see that it's got this ABC. Photoshop and Premiere do the same and brings it in as a thing called the sequence. If I double click on this to load it up, it brings up, you notice I've got basically a video track for each layer in Photoshop. So there's the background, which actually is completely unnecessary and I could remove because it's not part of the overall video. There's layer 1, which is the background behind. There's layer 2, which is one of the players, layer 3, which is the other player, and then there's the 3 layers that say Scotland v England. And the nice thing about this, as I say, for an editor, is that I can now go in and add some motion parameters, maybe make the players grow ever so slightly over a few seconds, or make the text drift slightly from left to right, or right to left, or flip the players 180 degrees on the screen, do all kinds of different things inside there. Whereas if it was a flattened JPEG, I would kind of be stuck with the image how it is. But then it goes. Now, we're still getting some warning triangles on here, but the reason for that is that Final Cut Pro still needs to render this red line here. So once I just render that, which will only take a few seconds, to modify, sequence, and I'll go render all video. Just need to save it. Okay, it takes a few seconds just to render that, which is really weird. It just processes what that image looks like and how it works, etc. And then, bingo, it's done. And if you look, we're getting this little green symbol here with a tick. And you can see there they've got these sort of bright spots where it's white, basically. But they're green zebra stripes. Now, what this means is that it's absolutely fine. It's broadcast legal. All the colours sit within the confines of what can actually be broadcast. The levels sit within the confines of what can be broadcast. But it's warning you that you're within 10% of the maximum. So don't push it any further than that. Had we got any red lines, we'd see a yellow warning triangle and we'd say, no way. We just switch those off so we can see it a little bit neater. And there we go. There's your video clip that's come over from Photoshop. Okay, so one last thing. I've made a little flowchart here that really just gives you an indicator of the kind of things that you should really do if you're making graphics for TV. This is a step-by-step guide of what you can do in Photoshop that I've put that together, and it's available if you want to download it from this place here. So if you take note of that URL and just type that in and go to it, and we'll start downloading that as a PDF, and you're very welcome to use it, keep it, or just ignore. It's entirely up to you. Thank you.